Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going on a deep dive with Paul Brunton as our guide
Who?
into the world of spiritual seekers and yogis in India.
Okay.
His book, A Search in Secret India, chronicles his experiences there. And, since you're interested in exploring different approaches to spirituality, I think you'll find this deep dive pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think so.
Brunton's journey took him all over India and introduced him to some really intriguing figures. We're talking about a magician,
Okay.
a self-proclaimed messiah, a silent sage, a yogi who could supposedly control his breath in some extraordinary ways, and even a scholarly astrologer.
Wow, that's quite a cast of characters.
It is, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is so captivating about his journey?
Well, I think what makes Brunton's journey so interesting is his initial skepticism.
Hmm.
You know, he was drawn to the spiritual claims of India, but he was also determined to separate genuine insight from illusion. And it's this balance of open-mindedness and critical thinking that makes his experiences so relatable, even today.
It's like he's a spiritual detective, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Sifting through clues and trying to uncover the truth. So, okay, let's unpack this a little.
Right.
Brunton's fascination with India actually started way back in his childhood. There was something about this far-off land that sparked his imagination, and it ignited a lifelong passion for him.
It's amazing how those early fascinations can sometimes shape our entire lives. Like in Brunton's case, it led him on this remarkable journey of self-discovery. He devoured every book he could find about India,
Yeah.
immersing himself in its spiritual traditions and all that mystical lure.
And that childhood fascination led him to actually travel to India as an adult. He landed in Bombay just brimming with anticipation, but also, as you mentioned, a healthy dose of skepticism. And it's in Bombay that he has his first encounter, and it's a pretty unexpected one. He meets an Egyptian magician named Mahmoud Bey, who is staying at the same hotel.
Yeah, and this wasn't just any parlor trick magician or anything. Bey performed feats that seemed to just defy logic. He seemingly read Brunton's mind, revealing details about his past that he couldn't have possibly known, and even conjured up specific scents out of thin air. Can you imagine witnessing something like that? Especially when you're already kind of inclined to be skeptical.
I think I would be questioning everything I thought I knew about reality. So how did Bey explain these seemingly supernatural abilities? Did he claim to have some secret knowledge or technique?
His explanation kind of delves into the realm of the supernatural. He claimed to work with spirits, including his deceased brother, and jinns, which are supernatural beings, in Islamic and pre-Islamic mythology, often associated with like fire or air. These beings, he said, communicated with him telepathically, providing information or energy for his feats. Definitely adds another layer to the whole experience.
Okay, now that's where my skepticism would definitely kick in. Spirits and jinns? It's a bit out there for me. So how did Brunton react? Was he buying into Beatty's explanations?
Brunton, ever the discerning observer, found himself both fascinated and cautious. He didn't outright dismiss Bey's claims, but he also didn't just blindly accept them. This encounter seems to have sparked even more curiosity in Brunton, pushing him to explore like the deeper layers of India's spiritual landscape.
You mentioned being interested in different approaches to spirituality, and Bay's claims of working with spirits definitely pushes the boundaries of what we typically consider spiritual.
It certainly challenges our conventional understanding. What's interesting here is that it introduces the idea that the spiritual realm might be more intertwined with other unseen realms than we might initially think. It raises questions about the nature of consciousness and energy and the boundaries of what we perceive as possible.
Yeah, it's a good point. And this encounter with Bay is just the beginning of Brunton's journey. Speaking of pushing boundaries, his next encounter is with someone who claims to be even more extraordinary. Have you heard of Meher Baba?
Oh yeah, Meher Baba,
Yeah.
the Parsi who declared himself to be a messiah. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
Brunton visits Meher Baba's ashram, which was a far cry from the luxury hotel where he met Bey. It's described as being quite bare and somewhat deserted, with like scattered buildings that once belonged to an army camp.
It's definitely a contrast, isn't it? You'd think a self-proclaimed messiah would have a more, shall we say, glamorous setting. So, what were Meher Baba's claims, and how did Brunton react to them? Was he convinced?
Meher Baba made some pretty bold predictions. He claimed to know the exact date of a coming world war, which he believed would be even more devastating than the previous one, just because of all the advancements in technology and stuff. He also declared that he would use his spiritual power to intervene in the conflict, stop the war, and restore peace to the world.
Wow, that's a pretty heavy claim. Did he elaborate on how he planned to achieve world peace? Was there a specific strategy involved?
He stated, that once he publicly announced himself as a messiah, nothing could withstand his power. As proof of his divine mission, he planned to perform miracles, like healing the sick, restoring sight to the blind, and even raising the dead. He believed that these miracles would compel people to believe in him and his message of peace.
That's quite the plan. So did Brunton witness any of these miracles firsthand? Was there any evidence to support these extraordinary claims?
That's a key point. While Brunton observed the devotion of Meher Baba's followers, he also noted that many of his prophecies went unfulfilled. The predicted world war didn't occur on the dates that he'd given, and the promised public miracles seemed to be more anecdotal than demonstrable.
That's interesting that even though his predictions didn't come true, people still followed him. What do you think drew people to Meher Baba despite these inconsistencies?
It's a question that speaks to the complexities of faith and belief. Perhaps people were drawn to his charisma or his message of hope or the sense of community they found in his ashram. It's a reminder that human belief systems are often multifaceted and can't always be explained by logic or evidence alone.
Yeah, that's true. It seems like Brunton is starting to see a pattern of bold claims without the evidence to back them up. So we've met a magician and a self-proclaimed messiah. Where does Brunton's journey take him next? What other kinds of spiritual seekers does he encounter?
From here, we shift gears a bit. Brunton's next encounter is with a yogi named Brahma, who practices body control. It's a form of yoga focused on mastering breath and physical postures. Brahma's story is quite different from the previous two figures.
In what way? What sets Brahma apart from the magician and the messiah?
Well, Brahma is presented as this humble and dedicated practitioner, someone who's devoted years to mastering his craft. He's not making grandiose claims about himself or predicting world events or anything. Instead, he demonstrates remarkable control over his own body, seemingly defying the limits of human physiology.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What kind of demonstrations are we talking about? Did he levitate or
Or
something?
not levitation, but what Brunton describes is still pretty extraordinary. He witnesses Brahma slowing his heartbeat to an almost imperceptible pace, and even stopping it completely for a short period. Brunton even, confirmed this by feeling his chest. It's tangible evidence of a power that, while not necessarily supernatural, is certainly extraordinary. This encounter must have been a turning point for Brunton, seeing a demonstrable example of yogic power.
It's definitely pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible, right?
Yeah.
This idea that we can control our bodily functions through breath work is pretty mind-blowing. It makes you wonder what other hidden potentials lie within the human body. Have you ever experimented with any breathwork practices yourself?
I have, and I find it fascinating how even simple breathing exercises can have such profound effects on our physical and mental states. It's a reminder that we often underestimate the power of our own breath and its connection to our overall well-being. But going back to Brahma, did he explain how he achieved such control over his body? Was it years of intense training or something?
That's what I want to know. Did he just wake up one day and realize he could stop his own heart?
Well, he actually shared his story of becoming a yogi with Brunton, and it's a tale of both fascination and caution. It all started with a childhood fascination with the practice. However, he initially practiced breathing exercises on his own without proper guidance, which led to a pretty serious injury.
Oh, wow. That's a good reminder of the importance of seeking qualified teachers when exploring any spiritual practice, especially one that involves manipulating the body's energy. You can't just dive into these things without proper guidance.
Absolutely. It's crucial to approach these practices with respect and caution. In Brahma's case, his injury made him realize the need for a guru, and he spent years wandering in search of a true master. He eventually found his teacher and dedicated himself to learning the techniques of body control. One of the practices he emphasized was the lotus position, that seated posture that's well known in yoga.
Oh, I've heard of the lotus position, but I've never been able to do it. It looks really challenging.
It requires significant flexibility and discipline to master, and Brahma claimed that it offered profound benefits for both physical and mental well-being. He even described it as a gateway to deeper yogic powers, including the ability to conquer death.
Yeah.
And extend one's lifespan for hundreds of years.
Hold on, conquer death. Now that's a bold claim. How did Brahma explain this longevity? Was it just the lotus position, or was there more to it?
He talked about a mystical nectar that yogis could access through breath control. This nectar, he claimed, nourished the body and prevented aging, leading to these extended lifespans. It's a concept found in various yogic and tantric traditions, often described as like a subtle energy or life force that can be cultivated through specific practices.
So did Brunton believe him? Was he convinced about this whole nectar of immortality thing?
Brunton, always the skeptic, struggled with this concept. He questioned whether these stories of extreme longevity were based on superstition or misunderstanding. However, witnessing Brahma's control over his breath and heartbeat left him open to the possibility that there might be more to these practices than meets the eye.
It seems like Brunton is caught between his rational mind and the experiences that are challenging his understanding of what's possible. He wants proof, but he's also open to the idea that there might be things beyond our current scientific understanding.
Exactly. And this tension continues as Breton's journey leads him to encounters with even more enigmatic figures, each pushing the boundaries of his perception and understanding of the spiritual realm.
Well, this has been a great start to our deep dive. I'm already hooked. Where does this exploration lead Brunton next? What other contrasts and contradictions does he encounter on his path?
Let's find out. Brenton's journey next takes him to a silent sage, a figure shrouded in mystery.
Oh, okay.
This sage lives in a small compound locked in from the outside and spends his days in deep trance states. He only communicates through written notes, a practice born out of a rather unsettling experience.
A vow of silence. That's intriguing, but it also sounds a little extreme. What happened to make this sage choose such a solitary and silent path?
Well, it's a story that highlights the challenges and even dangers that spiritual seekers can face. This sage used to live and meditate in a public park in Madras, but he became the target of harassment from a group of young hooligans who would
Right.
throw stones, dirt, and insults at him daily.
Oh, wow, that's terrible. Why didn't he just leave the park or defend himself? Was he trying to make some kind of statement?
It seems that this sage was a dedicated practitioner of nonviolence, and he had already taken a vow of silence. He endured the abuse, patiently refusing to retaliate or even speak out against his tormentors. It wasn't until a passerby witnessed the harassment and reported it to the police that the attacks finally stopped.
It's a reminder that even in the pursuit of peace and enlightenment, there can be unexpected obstacles and external forces that challenge our resolve. So how did this experience lead to the sage's complete vow of silence? It seems like he was already committed to silence even before the harassment.
Well, after the police intervened, an officer questioned the sage about the incident, wanting to understand why he hadn't defended himself or sought help. In response, the sage wrote a note explaining that his silence was a form of spiritual practice and that he'd forgiven his attackers. It seems that this experience solidified his commitment to silence as a way of life, leading him to move to the secluded compound where Brunton met him.
What a powerful story. It speaks to the depth of this sage's commitment to his spiritual path, choosing silence as a response to adversity. So did Brunton learn anything from this encounter despite the lack of verbal communication? Was he able to glean any insights from the sage?
Absolutely. Even in silence, profound wisdom can be shared. In one of their exchanges, the sage wrote a note emphasizing the importance of inward reflection, stating that this backward turning of thought is the highest yoga. This message seems to resonate with Brunton, prompting him to consider the power of introspection and turning the focus of awareness within.
It's a theme that we see emerging throughout Brunton's journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
This idea that true understanding begins with self-knowledge. It makes you wonder if sometimes we get so caught up in the external world that we forget to look within.
It's a valuable reminder for all of us, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information and external stimuli. The Silent Sage's story invites us to create space for stillness and introspection, to turn our attention inward and listen to the wisdom that resides within.
It definitely makes me think about my own life and how much time I spend on autopilot reacting to external events, rather than consciously choosing my responses.
It's something we can all benefit from reflecting on. And this theme of silent communication and presence is further emphasized in Brunton's next encounter, this time with a silent yogi named Ramaya. While the details of their meeting are brief in the source material, there's a palpable sense of profound connection between them, despite the lack of spoken words.
It's fascinating how deep communication can happen without language. Through shared presence and unspoken understanding, it reminds me of those moments when you just connect with someone on a soul level, and words become superfluous. Did Brunton share any insights into what he learned from Ramaya during their silent exchanges?
While he doesn't go into specifics, he describes forming a strange kind of silent friendship with Ramaya, bond that transcended the need for words. They spent time together in nature, walking through the jungle and climbing hills. And Brunton seemed to find a sense of peace and solace in Ramaya's presence.
There's something beautiful about that, isn't there? Finding a connection that goes beyond language, where words are simply not needed. It makes you wonder what we might learn if we cultivated more silence and presence in our own lives.
It's a powerful invitation to explore, isn't it?
It is.
To move beyond the constant chatter of our minds and tap into that deeper level of communication that exists in the stillness.
Okay, so we've gone from a magician and a self-proclaimed messiah to a silent sage and a silent yogi. It's like Brunton is moving deeper into the heart of India's spiritual landscape, exploring different paths to inner transformation. Where does this exploration lead him next? What other fascinating figures await him on his journey?
His path next takes him to Benares, where he meets Sudhe Babu, a scholarly astrologer. Brunton's encounter with Sudhe Babu adds another dimension to his exploration of spirituality, introducing the concepts of destiny and the influence of the cosmos.
I'm curious about this. Brunton initially expressed skepticism toward astrologers in India, finding them to be illiterate and stupid-looking. What changed his mind? Why was he willing to meet with Sudhe Babu?
It seems that Brunton's friend, who introduced him to Sudhe Babu, emphasized the difference between learned scholars and the charlatans who might exploit people's beliefs. Sudhe Babu is described as an intelligent and well-respected Brahmin who has devoted years to studying astrology. He even has a library filled with rare books on the subject.
So Brunton was willing to give astrology a chance, at least as it's practiced by someone with genuine knowledge and expertise. It makes sense. There are experts in every field, and it's important to discern between those who have true knowledge and those who might be pretending. What happened during their meeting? Did Sudhe Babu try to predict Brunton's future?
That's exactly what happened. Sudhe Babu analyzes Brunton's astrological chart, accurately describing his past experiences and personality traits, which must have been pretty impressive to Brunton. He then goes on to make predictions about Brunton's future, stating that he will travel extensively and become a successful writer. These predictions, which later proved to be true, leave Brunton somewhat bewildered, as he hadn't envisioned a life of travel and writing at that time.
Wow, it's like the encounter with the astrologer is nudging Brunton toward his destiny, planting seeds that will blossom later in his life. Do you think there's something to that? This idea that our paths might be influenced by forces beyond our control.
It's a question that has fascinated philosophers and spiritual seekers for centuries. It's the age-old debate of free will versus destiny. Sudhe Babu's predictions and their eventual fulfillment certainly add fuel to that fire.
It's a thought-provoking concept. While I believe we have the power to make choices, I also wonder if there might be a greater plan unfolding, a tapestry of events and experiences that are woven together in ways we can't always comprehend.
It's a beautiful way to think about it. And it seems Brunton is wrestling with similar questions as he continues his journey. He's intrigued by Sudhe Babu's predictions, but also hesitant to fully surrender to the idea of a predetermined fate. He wants to understand the mechanics of it all, the how and why.
It sounds like he's not just passively accepting the information he's receiving, but rather engaging with it critically, trying to make sense of it all within his own framework of understanding. It's a great example of how we can approach spirituality with both open-mindedness and discernment.
Exactly. Brunton's journey is a testament to the importance of critical thinking within the realm of spirituality. It's not about blindly accepting everything we hear, but rather engaging with different ideas and practices, questioning, reflecting, and ultimately forming our own understanding.
So did Sudhe Babu just focus on predicting the future, or did he offer any spiritual insights beyond astrology? Was there a practice or philosophy that he shared with Brunton?
He actually introduces Brunton to a Tibetan yoga system called Brahmachinta, a practice focused on mental control and achieving a sacred trance state. This system is known for its emphasis on visualization breath work and concentration techniques aimed at calming the mind and accessing deeper states of awareness.
Okay, so we're back to yoga, but this time with a mental focus. The concept of a sacred trance sounds intriguing. Did Sudhe Babu explain what this state entails and how it's achieved?
He explained that through Brahmachinta, yogis could achieve a state where their bodily functions seemingly ceased, allowing them to live for hundreds of years. He described these yogis as residing in remote Himalayan caves, existing in a profound state of inner awareness detached from the physical world.
That sounds similar to what Brahma said about yogis conquering death and extending their lifespans. It's interesting how this concept of extreme longevity keeps coming up. Did Brunton buy into this idea, or was his skepticism still present?
He was clearly fascinated by the concept, but those claims of extreme longevity still triggered his skeptical mind. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's one thing to witness someone controlling their breath and heartbeat, but the idea of stopping aging altogether is a whole other level of unbelievable. However, Sudhe Babu's explanation of Brahmachinta, especially his focus on mental mastery, planted seeds of curiosity in Brunton's mind. He started to consider the potential of mental control and its effects on the physical body.
It's like each encounter is adding a piece to the puzzle, expanding Brenton's understanding of the vast and varied landscape of spiritual practices in India. He's piecing together different perspectives, trying to grasp the bigger picture, but also holding on to his critical thinking, which is admirable.
And that's what makes his journey so relatable and inspiring. He's not just passively observing, he's actively engaging with these different approaches, questioning, reflecting, and ultimately shaping his own understanding of spirituality. He's not afraid to challenge ideas or express his doubts, which is something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between being open to new ideas and also critically evaluating the information we're presented with. So, where does this exploration lead him next? What other contrasts and contradictions does he encounter on his path?
Brennan's next stop takes him to a place called Dayalba, which translates to the Garden of the Lord. This community, led by a spiritual leader named Sahabji Maharaj, offers a stark contrast to Brunton's previous experiences. Dayalba is a modern industrialized community, blending spirituality with practical worldly pursuits.
Yeah, that's unexpected. We've gone from caves and ashrams to a community with factories and colleges. It sounds like a clash of worlds. It makes me wonder how spirituality can coexist with industrialization and modern advancements.
That's exactly the question that Brunton grapples with as he enters this unique community. He's immediately struck by the juxtaposition of the modern setting, European-style furniture, modern amenities. With the spiritual aspirations of its inhabitants, it challenges his preconceived notions of what a spiritual community should look like.
So, who is Sahabji Maharaj and what's his vision for this community? How does he reconcile spirituality with the demands of a modern industrialized society?
Sabji Maharaj is the leader of the Radha Swami Satsang Beas movement, a spiritual tradition that emphasizes sound yoga. This practice centers around inner listening and meditation, tuning into the subtle sounds within. He's described as a charismatic and practical leader, someone who sees no conflict between spiritual development and material progress. He believes that spirituality can and should be integrated into all aspects of life, including work technology and social progress.
It sounds like a balanced approach, integrating both inner and outer dimensions of life. It's definitely a different perspective from the renunciate traditions that emphasize withdrawing from the world.
It's exactly. Sahabji Maharaj explains that his aim is to demonstrate that spirituality can thrive within a modern context. He emphasizes the importance of cooperation, personal well-being, and the balance between material and spiritual pursuits. His vision is to create a community that is both spiritually evolved and materially prosperous, where individuals can contribute to the collective good, while also pursuing their own spiritual growth.
Did Brunton resonate with this approach? He seemed pretty skeptical of self-proclaimed messiahs and grandiose claims. Did Sahabji Maharaj and Dayalbad challenge his skepticism?
It's interesting because Brunton seems genuinely impressed by Sahabji Maharaj and the community he's created. He observes the dedication and enthusiasm of the people, who are working together to build a thriving community that integrates both practical and spiritual values. He's drawn to their sincerity and their commitment to creating a better world, both for themselves and for future generations.
It sounds like he's seeing a different side of spirituality here, one that's not about withdrawing from the world, but rather engaging with it in a conscious and purposeful way. So did Brunton end up embracing the teachings of the Radha Swami movement and joining their community? Did he find what he was looking for in Dayalbad?
Well, while he's intrigued by their emphasis on sound yoga and their vision of a balanced life, he remains hesitant to fully commit to any particular path. He expresses his desire for tangible proof before accepting the claims of this or any other spiritual tradition. However, Sahabji Maharaj's message that sincere seekers will eventually be led to their true master seems to resonate with Brunton, leaving him with a sense of hope and possibility.
It's like Brunton is acknowledging that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to spirituality. He's open to exploring different paths, but ultimately trusts that his own journey will unfold in its own time and way. He's not looking for a quick fix or a dogmatic belief system, but rather a deeper understanding that aligns with his own experience and intuition.
That's a valuable insight for anyone on a spiritual path, isn't it?
Yep.
There's no need to force things or feel pressured to conform to any particular doctrine. The most important thing is to stay open, keep seeking, and trust the process of self-discovery.
So after all these encounters, does Brunton find what he's looking for? Does he experience the spiritual enlightenment he set out to find? Does he find his true master?
His journey eventually leads him back to the Maharshi, the silent sage he met earlier in his travels. It seems that despite encountering a wide array of spiritual figures and practices, Brunton finds himself drawn back to the Maharishi's simple yet profound teachings on self-inquiry.
This is a full circle moment, returning to a figure who made a deep impression on him earlier in the journey. What is it about the Maharishi that draws Brunton back? What happens during the second encounter?
It sounds like he's coming full circle, almost like he was meant to meet all these other figures and explore all these different paths, only to be led back to the simplicity and depth of the Maharishi's teachings.
Right. What was it about the Maharishi that resonated so deeply with Brunton?
Well, the Maharishi's approach to spirituality was centered around self-inquiry, a process of turning inward and questioning the very nature of one's being. He didn't offer elaborate doctrines or rituals or anything, but rather pointed seekers back to themselves, encouraging them to discover the truth within. It seems Brunton, after all his explorations and encounters, was ready for this kind of deep inner work.
It's fascinating how Brunton's journey mirrors the process of spiritual seeking itself, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
We often start by looking outside ourselves for answers, exploring different philosophies and practices, but ultimately the most profound realizations come from within.
It's that inward journey that truly transforms us. Brunton's return to the Maharishi highlights the importance of finding a teacher or a teaching that aligns with our own inner yearning, something that resonates at a soul level.
So, what happened during this second encounter? Was it a repeat of their first meeting, or was there a deeper connection this time around?
It's described as a turning point for Brunton. He spends extended periods in the Maharishi's presence, immersing himself in the silent teachings and the palpable energy of the ashram. He speaks of profound experiences of inner peace clarity and a sense of merging with the Maharishi's consciousness.
Wow, it sounds like he's finally finding the answers he's been seeking. Not through external teachings or practices, but through a deep dive into his own inner world, guided by the Maharishi's silent wisdom. It makes you wonder if true enlightenment is less about acquiring knowledge and more about unlearning, about shedding layers of conditioning to reveal the truth that's already within us.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about stripping away the illusions, the beliefs, and assumptions that keep us separate from our true nature. And it seems Brunton, through his time with the Maharishi, is starting to experience this unveiling, this direct recognition of his true self.
It's amazing how powerful silence can be, isn't it?
It really is.
We often think of learning as a process of acquiring information. But sometimes the most profound teachings come through stillness and presence, just like Brunton's experience with the Maharishi.
The Maharishi embodied that stillness, that state of pure awareness. And simply being in his presence seems to have had a transformative effect on Brunton. It's a testament to the power of transmission. The idea that wisdom and understanding can be conveyed beyond words through a kind of energetic resonance.
It makes me think about the teachers and mentors who have had a profound impact on my life. It wasn't always about what they said, but rather their presence, their way of being that transmitted something deeper, something that shifted my perspective and inspired me to grow.
We all have those individuals in our lives, don't we?
do.
Those whose presence uplifts us, challenges us, and helps us to see ourselves more clearly. Sometimes it's a teacher, a friend, a parent, or even a stranger we encounter briefly. Those connections, those moments of resonance can leave a lasting imprint on our souls.
Speaking of impactful encounters, there's one we haven't touched on yet that seems relevant to this idea of finding a true master. Brunton mentions meeting a woman fakir named Hazrat Babajan while he was in Bombay. He doesn't go into detail about their interaction, but this encounter feels significant, especially considering what happened later in his journey.
It's a fascinating detail that adds another layer of mystery and intrigue to Brunton's story. He describes Hazrat Babajan as a revered figure, someone who seemed to possess a deep spiritual presence. While we don't know exactly what transpired between them, it's intriguing to note that several years later, Brunton receives a letter from a friend mentioning that Hazrat Babajan had predicted Brunton's eventual meeting with the Maharishi.
Whoa, that gives me chills. So it's like this woman fakir whom Brunton met briefly in Bombay somehow foresaw his connection with the Maharishi, his eventual return to the path of self-inquiry. That adds a whole other dimension to his journey, wouldn't you say?
It certainly does suggest that perhaps there are forces at play that we're not fully aware of, guiding us towards the people and experiences that we need for our spiritual growth. It's a reminder that the path of self-discovery is not always linear or predictable. Sometimes we're led in unexpected directions, only to realize later that those detours were essential to our growth.
It makes you wonder about the synchronicities and seemingly chance encounters that shape our own lives, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Those moments that feel divinely orchestrated, leading us towards our true purpose.
It's an invitation to pay attention to the subtle signs and synchronicities that appear in our lives, to trust that we're being guided even when we don't understand the how or why.
So after all these encounters, all these twists and turns, does Brunton leave India a changed man? Does he achieve the spiritual enlightenment he was seeking?
He describes leaving India with a newfound sense of spiritual certitude, a deep knowing that transcends dogma or belief systems. He states that he achieved this clarity without sacrificing his rationalism, suggesting that he found a way to integrate his intellectual mind with his spiritual experiences.
It sounds like a beautiful resolution to his journey. He's not abandoning his critical thinking, but rather expanding it to encompass a wider view of reality. He's not choosing between the mind and the spirit, but rather integrating both into a more holistic understanding of himself and the world around him.
That's the beauty of Brunton's story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It shows us that spirituality is not about abandoning reason or intellect, but rather about expanding our consciousness to include a wider range of experiences and perspectives. It's about embracing the mystery of life while also honoring the power of our own discernment.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Paul Brunton's A Search in Secret India, what are some of the key takeaways that we can apply to our own lives? Even if we're not traveling to India or seeking out yogis in caves, what can we learn from Brunton's journey that's relevant to our own quest for meaning and purpose?
Well, Brunton's story reminds us that the path of self-discovery is a lifelong journey, filled with unexpected twists and turns, moments of doubt and clarity, and ultimately a growing sense of connection to something greater than ourselves. It encourages us to be curious, to explore different perspectives, and to trust our own inner compass.
It also highlights the importance of finding teachers and teachings that resonate with our souls, those that guide us inward and help us to uncover the truth that resides within. And perhaps most importantly, it invites us to embrace the mystery of life, to be open to the possibility that we're being guided in ways we can't always understand, and to trust that the journey itself is the destination.
Beautifully said. And as we conclude this deep dive, we invite you to reflect on Brunton's experiences and consider what resonates most with you. What sparks your curiosity? What questions does his journey raise for you about your own spiritual exploration?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of India's spiritual landscape. We hope you've gained some insights and inspiration for your own journey. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.